Good day, everyone. What if I told you retirement is not an age, it's a number? FIRE means financial independence, retire early, not quitting work, not running away from life. It simply means this: when your investment pay your bills, work becomes optional. But of course, you already know this. Then why am I making this video? Well, here's the truth nobody tells you. FIRE in the US and FIRE in India are not the same game. Inflation hits harder, healthcare is unpredictable, and mistakes are expensive. This is why, in this video, we break down every FIRE type, Indian style, with real numbers, real risks, and real clarity. However, as always, a quick reality check before we continue. This content is purely educational and not to be construed as financial advice because I'm not a SEBI registered financial advisor. Please do your own research and consult a qualified professional. With this out of the way, let's talk money freedom. As we all know, every FIRE dream starts with one formula, which is the FIRE corpus is equals to annual expenses multiplied by a corpus multiplier. That multiplier decides how safe your FIRE really is. However, in India, we cannot afford any fantasy maths. This is because inflation in India runs at around 5 to 6% at government level, whereas on retail level this may even increase up to 7 to 8%, and on a personalized level this can very well rise up to 9 to 10% for areas such as education, healthcare, etc. Retirements can last unusually long of up to 40 years, and healthcare, well, that's completely unpredictable. Then how can we copy America's 4% rule blindly? This will be one of the biggest FIRE mistakes that most Indians make. So then what is a safe Indian withdrawal rate? A lot of recent papers have come in, including the ones of Ravi, as well as the new video which we heard of Mr. Ravi Handa as well. Now, while some people have differing views about it, but most likely 3 to 3.5% as of today seems to be a logical safe withdrawal rate, which ensures that you have lower risk, longer survival, and maybe a better night's sleep in India. So, what we just discussed would squarely fall under the first type of FIRE, which is the regular or classic FIRE. Now, this is the FIRE that most Indians should aim for. It's classic, it ensures you have same lifestyle, no job stress, and no panic withdrawals. Typically, you would need about 30 to 35 times of your annual expenses as the corpus, and this becomes your corpus multiplier. So, for example, you are spending 12 lakhs a year, your FIRE number sits at 3.6 to 4.2 crore depending on the multiplier. And with a sustainable withdrawal rate of around 3.5%, this approach rewards patience and discipline. It's not flashy, but it's repeatable and realistic. If regular FIRE is something which actually seems daunting to begin with, you can move into something called as lean FIRE or also frugal FIRE. Now, this is a little more attractive because it requires lesser money and may give you early freedom and a simple life. But here's the catch: lean FIRE runs on very thin margins. Usually, even your annual expenses are to be low, and add to it the corpus multiplier, which you're reducing and keeping maybe at around 20 to 25 times of your annual expenses. A typical person who would want to lean FIRE may be somebody who would be spending say around 4 lakh a year and is targeting around 1 crore. Do keep in mind that this retirement corpus is just one inflation spike or one medical emergency away, and then makes the entire plan go into doldrums. So, lean FIRE works, but only for those comfortable living lean permanently. Now let's talk about the dream version of FIRE. If lean was one extreme, this is the exact opposite. You travel without guilt, you have comfort without any compromise, and you want lifestyle upgrades without any fear. Welcome to Fat FIRE. Fat FIRE is a type of FIRE which requires around 40 to 50 times as your multiplier for the annual expense. Usually, even the annual expenses for people targeting this kind of FIRE are higher. So, for example, if you're spending 24 lakhs a year, your target jumps directly to 10 to 12 crores. Now compare this with lean fire, where the person was willing to fire at 1 crore. You see the difference? It is harder to reach, yes, but once achieved, the failure probability drops dramatically. This is basically fire with abundance. With this, let's move on to the two most confused types of fire: Barista fire and coast fire. Now, let's go into detail of each of them and then also do a slight comparison between the nuances that both these fire have. You don't have to go from 100 to 0, which means that in case of Barista fire, you are getting partial freedom. Your investments would cover most of the expenses, and the flexible income that you're getting reduces pressure for the same. This usually can work with a multiplier of 15 to 20 times of your annual expenses. Now, let's move towards coast fire. It is an even smarter choice, especially for those people who are early starters. Here, you focus on building the corpus as soon as you can and then let compounding do the heavy lifting. Basically, you're just coasting till retirement, and usually a 10 to 15 times of a multiplier in early career for the annual expenses would be good enough, assuming that your investments will keep meeting or beating inflation, so that by the time you retire, this corpus alone would be sufficient enough to fund your retirement. So let me try and compare these two. Barista fire would be like semi-retired with benefits. Coast fire would be something like set it and forget it. What this means is that in case of Barista fire, your retirement savings would be incomplete, whereas in case of coast fire, they would be complete in the present value, which would grow itself in the future to completely fund your retirement. Similarly, the investment withdrawals will start in Barista fire, whereas the same will not start in coast fire from your present corpus. As regards job income covers, the Barista fire basically is a fire in which your income is covering part of your expenses, whereas in coast fire, it will be covering 100% of your expenses. The stress level would obviously be lesser in Barista fire because your income is only contributing to a part of your expenses, whereas in case of coast fire, it will be relatively higher because your income is contributing to 100% of your current expenses. From a flexibility perspective as well, Barista fire becomes highly flexible, whereas coast fire is moderately flexible. And then if you come to the risk of job losses, then of course in Barista fire, you have a lower risk considering you are more attuned to work in your life without a job, or maybe take a break and get a job later. Whereas in coast fire, since your current expenses are fully being funded by your current job, your risk is higher of a job loss. I believe with this kind of a comparison, now you can clearly understand the difference between a Barista and a coast fire approach. However, if I were to give you one line difference and conclusion for both of these types, then coast fire means you're done saving but you're still earning, whereas Barista fire means you're partly retired and you're partly earning. Now let's move on to two new age fire types which have been a relatively recent construct. These are poverty fire and Henry fire. Let's focus on poverty fire. This is the extreme version of lean fire. Here, usually corpus would be 20 times of annual expenses or lower with no job. Now, this is usually not to be recommended for most of the people. There is no buffer, there is no backup, and this is high stress. One bad year can destroy almost everything. Accordingly, this particular kind of fire also has associated with it high risk of capital erosion, especially with the count of inflation being more than what was expected or modeled at, and also healthcare costs, which would usually rise much faster than most of the portfolio. Henry fire is basically derived from the acronym Henry on the other hand. So Henry means high earner, not rich yet. Now these people would usually have the mindset to spend it all. That is, whatever they are earning, they would usually be spending it within the month itself and are usually not left with any saving. So, more than the fire type, it's actually the mindset shift that is critical here. Henry firers are those who aim to leverage their current high income to accelerate FIRE without the lavish spending habits. Eventually, here also the multiplier would become 30 times only, but it's just that they are starting relatively late but can compensate for the same because of their high income. The key trait for this kind of FIRE is if you can save 50 to 70% of your income in a high earning category, and then you get the fast compounding advantage. So, the mindset here is that you need to bring discipline over and above your lifestyle inflation. Now, of course, we don't have a crystal ball to gaze into the future and tell what exactly would work. But if I was to stick my neck out and say that what could be a really good safe withdrawal rate in India, I think 3% is very safe as a SWR in India. 3.5% becomes relatively balanced, but do keep in mind in this case you may have to be open to the possibility of working in future. And 4% in my view is very aggressive for a high inflation country like India in its context. Now, there can be many failure scenarios, even black swan events that we cannot consider over here. But if you keep in mind these following 4 points, you would usually be good. First and the foremost, let's not assume over optimistic returns as they have been in the past of say 16%, 18%, etc. based on small cap performances, etc. Let's try to keep our lifestyle creep in check so that alone doesn't increase our annual expenses, which then gets multiplied by the multiplier and results in a significant increase in corpus requirement. There has to be your basics coverage in terms of your health insurance, life insurance, and emergency funds, as we have already discussed in the basics of FIRE video, which you can go through in the channel. And then try to avoid any kind of heavy debt, especially the ones which are not good debt. In my view, only home loan and education loan are usually good debts. Apart from that, most of the debt is basically to service your liabilities, needs, and wants, which doesn't work well in our scenario. So, if I was to sum this up, I would say that FIRE isn't about how much you make, it's about how much you're able to save and how long your money survives. So, let's summarize what we have learned so far. In order for you to start your FIRE journey, the first and the foremost step is to assess your risk tolerance. Understand what makes you comfortable with your money. Then, understand the market volatility as well as the associated factors of each and every investment type that you wish to make your portfolio in. Then comes the second stage of choosing your FIRE type. Basically, you choose the one which aligns with your life, your vision, and your FIRE approach. And finally, after having shortlisted your FIRE type, you calculate your FIRE number for that FIRE type. This ensures that your FIRE number is strictly yours, it is personal, and it is something which gives you a calm night's sleep. If this video helped you think clearly about FIRE, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. Your FIRE journey starts now, and here's your moth Snaky wishing you all the best for it. Regards.